Who controls the truth also controls the people. Authoritarian regimes or fake democracies know this well, and for this reason, they make lies their most powerful weapon. They are not interested in convincing the masses of one or more lies, specifically, but rather in confusing, manipulating, and annihilating any critical capacity. The main goal is not to persuade or lead to belief in who knows what, but to destroy trust in reality itself. When people no longer know how to distinguish between what is true and what is false, they become easy to control. Hannah Arendt has something fundamental to teach us about this. Historian, philosopher, and political scientist, she personally experienced the rise of Nazism and forced exile. She dedicated her life to understanding how power can manipulate reality and reduce people to silence. She fled Germany to escape persecution. She closely observed the mechanisms that drive societies to succumb to lies. Her reflections stem from the urgency to understand how indifference and conformity can transform evil into something everyday and acceptable. And it is precisely on this point that she warns us with words that I find extraordinarily clear. The purpose of lying continuously is not to make people believe a lie, but to ensure that no one believes in anything anymore. A people who can no longer distinguish between truth and lies can no longer distinguish between good and evil. And such a people, deprived of the power to think and judge, is, without knowing or wanting it, completely subjected to the empire of lies. With people like these, you can do whatever you want. Words that strike because they describe a reality, more relevant than ever. Today, as we live in the age of social networks, we are bombarded 24/7 by an inhuman amount of input in which the truth is completely annihilated. By avalanches of posts, videos, reels, tweets, shorts, reactions that constitute real weapons of mass distraction. Meanwhile, the mass media complete the picture, disseminating information with all their means, which is now only propaganda and marketing in the service of politics and finance. The key passage in Arendt's words is this: a people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies can no longer distinguish between good and evil. And this is how we discover the most well-known and surprising concept of the German philosopher, the banality of evil. An idea that arises from the awareness that the most devastating evil does not always manifest through extreme actions or cruel people, but can creep into everyday normality. This happens in each of us when we stop thinking, stop reflecting with our own minds, stop practicing critical thinking, when we obey without questioning. When habit takes the place of conscience, when doubts are replaced with certainties. For Arendt, the real danger is precisely this: evil becomes banal. When ordinary people give up thinking, they adapt, they conform. This is how evil becomes normalized, infiltrates daily life, and becomes part of the accepted reality, no longer being questioned. These ideas, Anna, developed in the book The Banality of Evil, Eichmann in Jerusalem, a work written after closely following the trial of Adolf Eichmann, one of the main people responsible for the deportation of Jews to concentration camps. On that occasion, Anna was struck by his mediocrity. Eichmann did not appear as a monster, but as an ordinary man who merely followed orders. He was not driven by hatred, but by habit, fear of disobedience, and a blind adherence to imposed rules. And it is precisely in this normality that Arendt recognized the most disturbing face of evil. To think that such dynamics are part of our past and therefore cannot be repeated would be a grave mistake. Every time a lie is accepted without questioning it, every time one obeys without reflecting, or when one turns a blind eye to injustice, that petty, silent, and diabolical mechanism is set in motion again. Evil often hides behind the illusion that everyone does it. And it is precisely in this daily indifference, today as it was then, that it finds its space to grow and proliferate. Today, misinformation, propaganda, and conformity push people to accept injustice without even realizing it. When one stops questioning and passively accepts imposed truths, they become part of a system that fuels indifference and disinterest. For me, and as Anne emphasizes, the answer to this drift is only one: to think critically, reflect on one's actions, and question what the consequences of what one does or accepts are. It is the first step to opposing evil. It is not a task reserved for intellectuals, but a responsibility for anyone who wants to live with dignity and awareness. Memory plays a fundamental role in this process. Remembering the mistakes of the past is an act of resistance against oblivion and complicity. Forgetting means making room for future injustices. This is why Arendt emphasized the importance of culture, art, and reflection as tools of defense against the annihilation of humanity. Freedom, once lost, is difficult to regain, warned the philosopher. But even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility to resist. And sometimes it only takes small acts of humanity, daily choices made with awareness, to change things. Every action, even the simplest one, can make a difference. Now I ask myself and I ask you how willing we are to think for ourselves, even when it's uncomfortable. How much value do we place on truth in a world where it is increasingly easy to succumb to lies? How many out there are ready to defend their freedoms, even when doing so means going against the current, as Hannah Arendt did? To conclude, I leave you with one of her quotes, which, now more than ever, we should keep in mind, and especially remind those leaders who today speak of rearmament and other similar defenses. War does not restore rights. It redefines powers.